All right, so this is the responsive web design, or with the specific course. Today I'm going to be going over the Learn Basic CSS by Building a Cafe menu from FreeCodeCamp. There are 91 steps, um, and we'll start with the first one. All right, so by the end of this course, we should have a web page that looks just like this. All right, let's start coding. All right, so for the first one, step one, in this project, you will learn the basics of CSS or cascading style sheets by building a cafe menu. Now, CSS is a language used to style an HTML document. It describes how HTML elements should be displayed on the screen. As you learned in the last few steps of the Cap Photo app, there is a basic structure needed to start building your web page. Every HTML document should have a doc type declaration and HTML element. The doc type tells the browser which version of HTML document it is in, and the HTML basically represents the root element, which contains all other elements. And here is a basic structure of what this looks like. So here we're going to add the doc type, HTML, and also the HTML element. So it's an opening tag and then a closing tag. So we have our opening and then our closing. And then within our opening tag, we have lang equals, or language equals to English. And that should be it for step one. Step two, add a head element within the HTML. So we already have our HTML. Here's the opening tag and here's the closing tag. And within it, we're going to add a head element and then a title element with cafe menu in between. All right, so and then within it, we should have our title. And then we have cafe menu. All right, now usually the title is what you see over here. As you can see, learn basic CSS, but of course, because we're doing it in this window or this console, we're not going to see it. But if you're building your own personal web page or whatever, the title should reflect what's over here. All right, moving on next. Step 3. The title is one of the several elements that provide extra information, not visible on the web page, but is useful for search engines on how the page gets displayed. Inside the head element, we're going to nest a meta element. So meta, and meta is self-closing or a void element. So we don't need a closing tag for the meta. We're going to have char set equals utf-8. Step 4, to prepare to create some actual content, add a body element below the head element. So we have our body, and that should be it. Step 5, now it's time to add some menu content. Add a main element within the existing body. So within here we have our main. Step 6, the name of the cafe is Camper Cafe. Add an h1 element within your main. So we have our h1. Oh, sorry, nope. Camper Cafe. There we go. Now, as we can see, now whatever goes in the body element is what you see on the web page. So we already have Camper Cafe showing. Step 7. Now we're going to create a P tag, which is also called a P element, and right below the H1 element, and we are going to put within the P elements the EST 2020. So P est.2020. And let's see, that's it. Now you can see paragraph elements right there. There will be two sections on the menu, one for coffees and one for desserts. We're going to add a section element within the main element, so you have to place, you have a place, sorry, to put all the coffees available. Um, all right, so this goes, I believe that goes right below over here. Let me see. Let's try this and see. All right, let's go. Um, create an H2 element in the section. So that'll be H2, and within it, we're gonna put coffee. Step 10. Up until now, you have been limited regarding the presentation and appearance of the content you create. To start taking control, add a style element within your head element. So here's our opening tag and closing tag of our head element. So they're saying somewhere within here, we need to add our style element. And I believe we need a closing tag for the style also. Yep, that's correct. Step 11. You can add style to an element by specifying it in the style element and setting a property for it like this. So the element comes first, you have your curly, the property, and then the value. So in this style element, the element we're targeting is H1, curly, properties text align, colon, and then center for the value. And as you can see, our Campo Cafe, which was an H1 element, is centered because that's exactly what we targeted. Step 12. In the previous step, you used a type selector. So what we just did was the type selector to style the H1 element. Center the content of the H2 and the P elements by adding a new type. So basically, you want us to do this over again, but this time for the EST 2020, that's the paragraph, and also the coffee. So copy, and I'm just gonna paste this 2 times. And then this is for H2, and then P. All right. 13. You now have 3 type selectors with the exact same styling. You can add the same group of styles to many elements by creating a list of selectors. Basically, what this is saying is this. If we look at the properties, they're all the same. The values, they're all the same. The only thing different is what? The elements. Now, instead of writing it 3 times, we could actually just delete these last 2 and then separate it with a comma. So comma, H2, comma, P. And it still works. Step 14. You have style 3 elements by writing CSS inside the style tags. This works, but since there will be many more styles, it's best to put all the styles in a separate file and link to it. Now, again, what it's saying is that there's going to be a lot of code, all right, with the HTML itself, and now we have the styles element, and now we're putting CSS in there. It's going to be long. So why don't we just create a separate file called styles.css and put all our CSS info or code there, is basically what it's saying. Now it says start by rewriting the styles you have created into the styles.css file. Now everything we've done so far. So I'm just going to go to, now these are kind of like tabs. So I'm going to just click on index.html and I'm looking for my style. There we go. And everything within here, I'm just going to copy it. Control C. I just do Control C, turn it back off, and then paste it right here. So this time it's going within our styles.css file. Let's check it, and there it's go. Step 15. Now that you have a CSS in the styles.css file, go ahead and remove the style. So we have it here in our style.css. We don't need it in our HTML file anymore. So everything here, delete. As you can see, it's it's back to its original state. It's no longer in the center. All right, so we're going to fix that. We're going to fix that by creating a link element, which is self-closing or a void element, and it's going to have a relationship or rel equals to style sheet, and then it's going to have a reference to, or href, to styles. That is the file that we created. And there we go, it's back. Now, here, basically, they want us to add all of this code. You could just copy and paste it instead of typing it. All right. Now, what does it do? It says, for the styling of the page to look similar on mobile, emphasis is on mobile, as it does on the desktop or laptop, you need to add this meta element. So this right here, I can put it anywhere within the head elements, but I'll just put it right below this meta. All right, just to make it look good. Step 18. The text is centered again, so the link to the CSS file is working. Now we're going to add background color. All right, so background dash color, and we have brown. And wait, let me see, property for the body elements. Oops, sorry, I kind of rushed on ahead. Now, if you make a mistake, what you could always also do is just click reset, and it resets the whole thing. Now, because it's saying, let's see, it says add another style to the file that changes the background color property to brown for the body element. This is for the body element. All right. So what I'm going to do is do body, and that. There we go. This is what it was asking for. Step 19. Now, the background is a little bit too brown, or whatever it is. All right, let's just change the color to burly wood. All right, burly wood. Now it looks like that. Step 20. The div element is used mainly for design layout purposes, unlike the other content elements you have used so far. So we're going to add a div element inside the body element and then move all the other elements inside the new div. So here's our body element right here, right? And it says we're going to move all other elements. So that's the main, H1P, section, etc. within this div element. So inside the opening div tag. All right, so this is what we're going to do. So here's our div, and then closing tag div. All right. Now, take note. If you look at it, the way I've done it, everything is in there. Now, of course, this is not properly indented, where we can just add a space to all of them, so it's properly indented. But again, this platform will basically fix, once I click check code and move on to the next one, it's going to fix the indentation. All right, so the last part, it wants us to add an ID attribute with the value menu. Now, attributes right here, from what I've come to notice, attributes always go in the opening tag. So here's our div opening tag, and our attribute is going to be menu. There we go. 21. The goal now is to make the div not take up the entire width of the page. As you can see, the CSS width, it will make sense later on. The CSS width property is perfect for this. You can use the ID selector to target a specific element with an ID attribute. Now, an ID selector is defined by placing the hash symbol, right? So we've learned of the type selector, now we're learning of the ID selector. And we use that by placing the hash symbol directly in front of the element ID value. For example, if an element has the ID of cats, then this is what it's going to look like. Now, what it wants us to do now is to use the menu. So that's a hash menu curly, and let's see, we're going to give it a width, right, of 300 px, which is 300 pixels. All right. Now, next is to learn about comments. Now, comments in CSS looks like this. In your style sheet, comments out the lines. We're going to comment this out. All right. Now, once you comment something out, it's not run. You don't see it basically. It takes no effect. So / steric, and then we close it. All right. Now, comments in coding, it allows you to be able to leave notes, to dos, whatever, or maybe comment a code out in case you're trying to debug or something like that. There are many uses of this, and it's very pretty cool, I would say. All right, so let's check this. And step 23. Now, use the existing hash menu selected to set the background color of the div element to Burleywood. All right, so now we have our background color, and then it's going to be Burleywood. All right. 24. Step 24. Let's see. Now it's easy to see that the text is centered inside the menu element. Currently, the width of the menu element is specified in pixels. Change the width property value to 80% to make it 80% of the width of its parent element, which is the body. So 80% of 80%. All right. 25. Next, you want to center the menu horizontally. As you can see, it's not centered horizontally. You can do this by setting its margin left and margin right properties to auto. So let's see. And auto. There we go. 26. So far, you have been using type and ID selectors to style. Now, we're introduced to a new one called class selector. So we have type selector, ID selectors, and our class selectors. All right. So that again, going over the type selector, you choose a specific type of element, right? The ID selector starts with a hash. Now the class selector starts with a dot, right? A dot directly in front of it like this. Now you're going to change the existing one right here and just make it a class selector by putting a dot. All right. Now we're going to fix the background. Now let's go. Now to apply the class's style into the div element, remove the ID, and we're going to put class instead. Since the cafe's main product for the sale is coffee, you should use an image of coffee beans for the background of the page. Now, we're going to delete this comment and its contents. So we're going to delete this, right? And inside the body selector, now we're going to add a background image. So background dash image. And then we're just going to copy from URL to this parentheses. All right, do not copy the dot, or else the checker is going to give you a hard time. All right, and now we have our background of coffee. 29. It's looking good. Time to start adding some menu items. Add an empty article element under the coffee. So, all right, so we have our article. Oh. Now, article elements commonly contain multiple elements that have related information. In this case, it will contain a coffee flavor. Again, we're going to have different coffee flavors and a price for that flavor. Now, we're going to nest 2p elements inside your article. All right, so 2p elements. Let's do that first. And then the first one is going to have French vanilla. So that's the first one. Then the next one is going to have 3, assuming it's dollars. All right, so that's one article. Step 31. Starting below the existing coffee or price pair, add the following coffee and prices using article elements with 2 nested P elements inside each. As before, the first P element text should contain a coffee flavor, and then the next one should contain a price. So how many do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 flavors and prices. So I'm going to copy this and paste it 4 more times. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the caramel goes into the second one. So we have French vanilla. So the second one is where we go. And then the price is $3.75. $3.75. And then we have pumpkin spice. And that's $3.50. Hazelnut. That's $4. And then finally mocha, which is $4.50. $4.50. That should be it. There we go. And as you can see, we have coffee flavors right here. All right, moving on. Now, the flavors and prices are currently stacked on top of each other. As you can see, it's French vanilla and then $3. Caramel macchiato and then $3.75. All right, so we want them basically by the end, we should have them on the same line. All right, it would be nice if the flavor was on the left and the price was on the right. Now, add the class name flavor to the French vanilla P element. So class equals flavor. All right. Using your new flavor class as a selector. So we've got flavor, I mean, curly text dash align, right? Left. All right, on the left hand side. Now for this one, a class called price. Step 35, same process as this. I'm just going to copy this. Paste. Instead of flavor, it's going to be price and text align right instead of left. $36. Now, that is kind of what you want. But now it would be nice if the flavor and price were on the same line. As you can see, they're still on different lines, right? Now it says P elements are block elements or block level elements, so they take up the entire width of their parent elements. To get them on the same line, you need to apply some styling to the P elements so they behave more like inline elements, all right? To do that, so again, block level elements, they move to the next line, right? Inline elements, same line. To do that, start by adding a class attribute with the value item to, to do that, start by adding a class attribute element with the value item to the first article element under. So that means class equals item. There we go. So 37. The P elements are nested in an article element with the class attribute of item. You can style the P elements nested. So within the article elements, right, we have P elements. So what we can do is that we can use the item class and then target specifically the P elements within the article. So using the above selector, add a display property. So basically it's going to be dot item targeting P elements, and we're going to have our display property, and we're going to have inline dash block. Yep. It's not quite yet, but we're getting there. 38. That's closer, but the price didn't stay on the right. This is because inline block elements only take up the width of their contents. To spread them out, add a width property to the flavor. So we're going to have a width property to the flavor of 50%. And then we're going to have, I think, the same for the price also. All right, but as you can see, it moved down to the next line. All right, we're going to fix that as we move on. Now, 39. Well, that didn't work. Styling the P elements are as inline block and placing them on the separate lines in the code creates an extra space to the right of the P elements. All right, so one way to fix this is to make each P elements width a little less than 50%. So we're going to change the width value to 49% for both classes. So 49, 49. That worked, but there's still a little space, right? Still a little space on the right of the price right here. You could keep trying various percentages, etc., and stuff like that. But what we could do is, as we can see, there is space from here, from this second P tag to this side. So what we're going to do is we're just going to delete that space. There you go. Now they're together, and that's basically what it's asking for. All right, let's move on. All right, now go ahead and change both the flavor and price class widths to 50% again. So we have 50 and 50. All right, now we've moved that extra space that was there. 42. Now that you know it works, you can change the remaining article and P elements to match the first set. Start by adding the class item. So everything that we just did over with the first article right here, we added a class item, we had a class flavor, we have class flavor, class price, we deleted the extra space. We're going to do that to this, right? These flavors. But first, what they want us to do is to do the class item for each article elements opening tag. So space, space, here's the opening, space. There you go. And I think that's it. 43. Next, position the other P elements to be on the same line with no space between them. So if you remember, we deleted the space between them. So we're going to delete the space for all of them. All right, sorry about that. That was probably very loud. All right, so step 44. To complete the styling, add the applicable class names, flavor, and price to all the remaining P elements. So we have class flavor. All right, I'm just copying for the previous one. So we have the first one with the flavor. Okay, pumpkin spice, hazelnut. Make sure it's going in the opening tag of the P elements of the first P element and not the price. Now we can do the price because I believe it said we should do it for both. Okay, so here's the price of the opening tag. There's the other one, and then all right, 45. If you make the width of the page preview smaller, you will notice at some point some of the text on the left starts wrapping around to the next line. This is because the width of the P element on the left side can only take up 50% of the space. Since you know the prices on the right have significantly fewer characters, that is, the price, as you can see, has fewer characters than that on the left. What we're going to do is that we're going to change the flavor to take up 75%. And then we're going to change this to take up 25. You will come back to styling the menu in a few steps, but for now, go ahead, add a second section element below the first to display um, desserts. All right, and within here, we're going to have our H2, and we're going to have desserts. All right, 48. Add an empty article element under the desserts. With the class name item. Oh, no. 49. Now within here, we're going to nest 2p elements. Nest 2p elements inside their article elements. The first one should be donuts, and then so. Oops. And then we have our next one, 1.50. 15. For the 2p elements you just added, add dessert as the value for the first p elements class. So the first p element is going to have a class called dessert, and then the next one is going to have that called price. All right, we haven't created a class selector for desserts yet, so that's why you see only the price. There's a change. All right, something does not look right. You added the correct class attribute value to the p element with donut as its text, but you have not defined a selector for it. The CSS rule for the flavor class already sets the properties you want. So we're just going to add a dessert class as an additional selector. So comma dot dessert. There we go. 52. Below the dessert you just added, add the rest of the desserts and prices using 3 more article elements, each with 2 nested p elements. All right, so there's 1, 2, 3. So we're going to add all of them. So 1, 2, 3. And what do we need? We need cherry pie. Let's see, we have donut here. So here's going to be cherry pie. 275. We have cheesecake. We have $3. And cinnamon roll for $2.50. All right. Let's see. All right, we got it. 53. You can give your menu some space between content and the sides with various pattern properties. Now, we're going to give the menu class a pattern left and a pattern right, with the same value as 20px. So 20px. All right, so we got some pattern on the left and the right. 54. That looks better. Now try to add some 20px pattern to the top and bottom. So here, same process, but this time it's top and bottom. So top. Now there's an easier way to do this. And because we're doing left, right, top, bottom, there's an easier, we could have just used pattern, which it's going to talk about later on. 55. Since all 4 sides of the menu have the same internal spacing, we could have just used pattern. All right, so we're going to delete everything. It's just showing that there's an easy way. And instead, pattern takes care of the north, south, east, east, west. 56. The current width of the menu will always take up 80% of the body element's width. On a very wide screen, the coffee and dessert appear far apart from their prices. Add a max width of 500 pixels. All right, and that should work. Yep, that works. All right, so that was it for 56. All right, 57. Now it says you can change the font family of text to make it look different from the default font of your browser. Each browser has some common fonts available to it. Now we're going to change all the text in your body by adding, so within the body elements, or should I say within the CSS style for body, or the type selector, we're going to have for the property font dash family and sans dash serif. And let's see, that works. All right. So as you can see, the font changed. 58. Moving on to 58. Click. Taking a second. Click. 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 Oh, there we go. It is a bit boring for all the text to have the same font family. You can still have the majority of the text sans serif and make just the H1 and H2 elements different using a different selector. Style the body and both the H1 and the H2 elements using a single selector so that these elements text use impact font. So we're going to have H1, H2. And again, we're using a single selector. So this is a single selector. And we have the font dash family and impact capital I. There we go. Different from the sans serif. Now, you can add a fallback value for the font family by adding another font name separated by a comma. So fallbacks are used in instances where the initial is not found or available. So we're going to add a font fallback, comma, and then serif. There we go. 60. Make the EST text italicized by adding an established class. Now, because it's a class, it's a dot established, curly, font dash style, and italic. All right, nothing happened because we haven't added the class to the actual elements yet as an attribute. So 61. Now apply the established class to this. So that would be class equals and then established. And as you can see, changed. 62. The typography of heading elements is set by default values of users' browsers. Add two new type selectors, H1 and H2. Use the font size property for both, but use the value 40px for the H1. Okay, so I think I've already done this. All right, so basically this is how it looks like. Sometimes when you've done it already, it saves it, and I'm guessing, as you can see, it worked. So this is how it's supposed to be. I guess it's saved from the last time I did it. So H1, you have your font size 40px, H2 font size 30px. All right, 63. Let's see. Now it says add a footer element below the main element. So here's our main, and where you can add some additional information. Let's see where the closing tag is. Okay, so right below it, we're going to have our footer. Oh, and I should, as you can see, it didn't save for this one. Step 64. Inside the footer, we're going to add a P element. Then nest and anchor A element in the P, so we're going to nest an A element or an anchor. All right, and that links to this. So we have our href equals, and then we have our link here that goes in our href, and then enhanced text visit website that goes right here. Take a good look at where it goes, where my cursor, blinking cursor is. All right, so we have that. Let's scroll all the way to the bottom. As you can see, visit our website, and it's a clickable link. But we're not done yet. And make sure that the link opens in a new tab by adding a target attribute with the value underscore blank. So we need to find our opening tag of the anchor element, which is this right here. And right after this, I'm going to put space target equals underscore blank, which basically opens a new tab. 65. Add a P element. What am I doing? It says add a second P element below the one with the link. Okay, so I think it's referring to this. And then we're going to put the address. All right, so we have the address over there. You can use an HR element to display a divider between sections of different content. First, add an HR element between the P element with the class established. So here's our P element with the class established, right? And the first section. So right in between here and HR. And it's a void element. This is what we have. So we don't need to close it, basically. 67. The default properties of an HR element will make it appear as a thin line, light gray line. All right. Now we're going to change the height. Now change the height of the HR element to be. So basically, I guess we're using a type selector. So HR curly, and we have a height property, and it's going to be 3px. There you go. Change the background color. So this will be background dash color to brown. '69. Notice the gray color. There's a gray outline. If you look closely, there's gray outline. All right. Now we're going to make all the edges of the HR element the same color as the background, which is brown. So by using the border color, border dash color, brown. All right. All right. So for step 70, it says notice how the thickness of the line looks bigger. The default value of a property name border width is 1px for all edges of HR elements. By changing the border to the same colors as the background, we basically have a total height of 5 pixels. That is 3px plus the top and bottom width. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the height property to 2px instead. Go ahead and add another HR element between the main element and the footer element. So let's scroll down. So main and then the footer. So we have an HR right here between the main and footer. There we go, there. To create a little more room around the menu, add 20px of space on the inside of the body using a pattern. All right, so a pattern of 20px. All right. 73. Focusing on the menu items and prices, there is fairly a large gap between each line. Um, so use the existing selector that targets all the P elements nested in elements with a class name item and set their top and bottom margin to be 5px. So let's see. That would be right here, and margin top 5px, right? And margin, no, margin dash bottom is for 5px. Hopefully I got that right. Yes, I can spell. There you go. 74. Using the same style selector in the previous step, make the font size of the items and prices basically larger. So that'll be font dash size. We have 18px. Changing the margin bottom to 5px looks great. However, now the space between the cinnamon roll, that's here, menu item, and the second HR element does not match the space between the top HR element and then the coffee. So add some more space by creating a class name bottom line. Now add the bottom line to class equals. All right, now it should be applied. 77. Next, you're going to be styling the footer element. To keep the CSS organized, add a comment at the end of style.css. Okay, so our comment within CSS is going to look something like this. Moving down to the footer element, make all the text have a value of 14px for the font size. So that'll be footer, I believe. And then font size 14px. The default color of a link that has not yet been clicked on is typically blue. The default color, let's go down, all right, the default color of a link that has already been visited is basically or typically purple. To make the footer elements the same color regardless if the link has been visited, use the type selector for the anchor element and use the value black. So we have color and black. All right, as you can see, now it's black. All right, you change the properties of a link when the link has actually been visited by using the pseudo selector that looks like this. So we have a colon visited, and the property name, that would be color, because the color is what we're trying to change, and gray. As you can see, it's gray now. All right, same thing for when you hover over it. Color brown. All right, so let's hover over it. As you can see, it's brown. And then when it's actually being clicked, a active color white. So being clicked, as you can see, turns white. To keep with the same color theme you have already been using, black and brown, change the color for when the link is visited to black, and when it's actually clicked, that is active, to brown. All right, let's see. And that works. All right, so step 84 says the menu text Camper Cafe has a different space from the top, right? And the address is space at the bottom, right here. This is due to the browser having some default top and margin for the H1 element. Now it says change the top margin of H1 element to 0. So margin dash top 0, right? 25. To remove some of the vertical space between the H1 element and the EST, 2020, change the bottom margin to 15px. Now the top spacing looks good. The space below the address at the bottom of the menu is a little bigger than the space at the top of the menu and the H1 element. To decrease the default margin space below the address P elements right here, create a class selector. And margin dash bottom 5px. Alright, now apply the address class to the P element containing the street address. So class alright, 88. The menu looks good, right? But other than the coffee beans background image, it is mainly just text. Under the coffee heading, add an image. So that's an IMG. An IMG again is self-closing, SRC. Alright. And then we have an ALT, alternative. This is going to be coffee icon. Alright, we have a little icon over there. The image you added is not centered horizontally, so we got to fix that. To make the image behave like heading elements, which are block level, create an IMG type selector. So IMG, and use the value block for the display property. So display, and use the applicable margin left and margin. So margin dash left. I believe auto, and margin right auto. There we go. Now we're going to add one last image. SRC, ALT, pie icon, and then we have this over here for the SRC. There we go. And the last one. It would be nice if the vertical space between the H2 elements and their associated icons was smaller. The H2 elements have default top and bottom margin space, so you could change the bottom margin of the H2 elements to say 0 or another number. There's an easy way. Simply add a negative top margin to the IMG elements to pull them up from their current positions. Negative values are created by adding this dash or a negative in front of the value. To complete this project, go ahead and use the negative top margin of 25px in the image type selector. And I think if I got it right, minus 25px. All right, and that is what web page looks like.